Sir. Sir.
Ready. I'm ready. Okay.
Around 100 people join ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಈಗ.
Fine. I can see that. Yes, 111. Right.
11 ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು 10 minutes ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ ಸರ್. ಕಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ ಸರ್.
Okay.
ಸೊ ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಮ್ಮ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿಯಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಸರ್ಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಬಂತು ನಮಗೆ. ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕನಿಷ್ಠ 2 ವೆಬಿನಾರ್ನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಮಗೊಂದು ಸರ್ಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಬಂದಿತ್ತು. ಆ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಯತ್ನದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಟಡೀಸ್ ಇನ್ ಕಾಮರ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಪೋಸ್ಟ್ ಗ್ರಾಜುಯೇಟ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಹೇಮಗಂಗೋತ್ರಿ ಹಾಸನ್, we requested Professor Yashwant Dongre to give us a topic. He has suggested a topic on exploring the emerging domain of social enterprises. We are commerce students. Commerce students means we study the subjects related to business entities. Business entities, if you look into the business entities, they have 2 dimensions. One is economic dimension, another one is social dimension. Economic dimensions means making profit, growing their business, expanding market share, market capitalization, all these things. Along this, we have social dimension also. For example, KSRTC, it is meant for making profit, providing transportation service. It also provides free passes to the students so that poor people, village people can come to the cities and they can study. So this is subject of interest for commerce students in the interdisciplinary subject. We have planned for 4 webinar sessions. Today is the beginning, 7th, tomorrow is another 10th and 11th. In the 4 sessions, we are covering 4 modules of one software paper we have introduced in our university in the last year. That is management of social enterprises. I welcome all of you. I request Professor P. Sharanappa, the Director of Postgraduate Center, Hemagangotri Hasan, to welcome the chief guest and participants. Over to Sharanappa.
Unmute ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅವರು.
Unmute ಮಾಡಿ.
ಶರಣಪ್ಪ unmute ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು.
Sir, ಕೇಳಿಸುತ್ತಾ? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning to all. It's my pleasure to welcome Professor R. Shivappa, Registrar, University of Mysore, for this webinar program. I thank him for providing permission and all kind of support to organize this webinar series on exploring the emerging domain of social enterprises. And also I would like to thank Honorable Vice Chancellor of our university, Professor G. Hemant Kumar, who is not in today's program, for providing all help to this webinar series. He is the key initiator of webinar series in our university. I am also happy to welcome a resource person of today's session, Professor Yashwant Dongre, to this webinar program. I also will welcome organizing secretary, Professor Mahadevappa, for this 4-day webinar series, who put all efforts for organizing this webinar program. It is my great pleasure to welcome faculty members, research scholars, and students who participate in this webinar series. I'm happy to say that more than 500 participants attending in this 4-day webinar series on exploring the emerging domain of social enterprises. Social enterprises are also business organization with the aim of social agenda and also having lot of social cause. The main purpose of social enterprise is to promote, encourage, and make social change. It is having both business goals and social goals. Social enterprises brings financial sustainability in the society. It is a robust area of both innovation and academic research. The main theme of this webinar series is to explore the structural and managerial issues related to social enterprises. I believe that all faculty member, research scholars, students will get benefited from this program. Thank you all.
Now it is the time for to inaugurate this function. Our Honorable Registrar, Professor R. Shivappa, is a social scientist. He headed the social MSW department, and he worked tirelessly in the department, and he is collaborating with many foreign universities and industries for spreading the social work education. When I requested him to inaugurate this seminar, Professor has agreed it and is with us. I welcome, I request the Professor R. Shivappa, Registrar, to inaugurate this program and address the gathering.
Good morning, everybody. I congratulate our postgraduate center, Hema Gangotri Hassan, and also Director, University Industry Interaction Center, Professor Madhav Pasar. And in the absence of Professor G. Hemant Kumar sir, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, was supposed to be here, and for some reasons he is not here, and he would be joining on 10th, I heard. So I express my gratitude to Professor G. Hemant Kumar sir and highly respected Professor Yashwant Dongre sir is here in this webinar series. He is going to be addressing all of you. And also Professor P. Sharanappa, who is right now Director, PG Center, University of Mysore, Hema Gangotri, Hassan, and all the participants, all the viewers, participants, and other resource people of this webinar series. So I am extremely happy that we are doing this kind of discussions, thinking, sharing, caring, and everything is happening digitally. I think because of COVID has taught us many lessons, and the methodology, pedagogy, methodology, and other things. So we are now slowly we are catching up with the new changes. And this is also, we are not depending so much on this kind of digital methodologies, but due to these conditions, the prevailing conditions right now, I think we are doing it, and it's going to help us in many ways. And people are there in different parts of the world, and we can meet each other digitally so easily. And technology has given away these opportunities. I think better we make use this kind of things in these difficult times. So I'm extremely happy that though Professor Yashwant Dongre is from a commerce and management background, always he is thinking about social aspects. Really, I know him. I know Professor Dongre sir for last so many years, so many decades, and he's really a social scientist, economist, and also management expert and things like that. I can term him. So whenever I worked with him closely on several occasions, and he has given a wonderful topic that exploring the emerging domain of social enterprises. When I heard this title, so really I'm thrilled about this one. I would like to share one small experience with you. I went to Bangalore for one of the program very recently, not recently, about 2 years back. So there was one person by I don't remember his name, but I met him in one of the function in Bangalore University, and he has narrated a story. I would like to share with you. This is very much relevant to this particular topic, and also this to begin our discussions on this emerging domain of social enterprises. So he said, see, he was having a family. ಗಂಡ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಇದ್ರು. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂಚೂರು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ಅದನ್ನ. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಎವ್ರಿಬಡಿ ಇಸ್ ಏಬಲ್ ಟು ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಕನ್ನಡ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೋದು. ಅವರು ಗಂಡ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಇಬ್ರು ಇದ್ರು. ಒಂದು ಫೈನ್ ಡೇ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಥರ ಅವರು ಮದುವೆ ಆದರು. ಮದುವೆ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಯಿತು. ಸೊ ದೇ ವರ್ ಲಿವಿಂಗ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪಿಲಿ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮಗು ಬರ್ತಾ 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 ಒಂಚೂರು ಯಾಕೋ ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಮಗು ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತು. ಒಂಥರ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ಲಿ ಏಬಲ್ಡ್ ಮಗು ಆಯಿತು. ಸೊ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಒಂಥರ ಇದಾಯಿತು, ಏನಪ್ಪ ನಮ್ದು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಆಯ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಇಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗೆಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ವಿ, ಈ ಥರದ್ದು ಒಂದು ಮಗು ಹುಟ್ಬಿಡ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಏನು ಮಾಡೋದು ಅಂತೇಳಿ. ದೆನ್ ಹೀಗೇನೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಆ ಮಗುನ ಹಂಗೆ ಬೆಳೆಸಿದ್ರು. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅದು ಟೀನೇಜು 14 years 15 yearsವರೆಗೆಲ್ಲ ಬೆಳೆಸಿದ್ರು. ಆದರೂ ಇದಾಗಕ್ಕಾಗಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಏನು ಮಾಡೋದು ಈ ಮಗುನ, ಏನು ಮಾಡೋದು, ನಾವು ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಥರ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಗು ಆಗಲಿಲ್ವಲ್ಲ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ತಂದೆ ತಾಯಿಗಳು ಭಾಳ ಚಿಂತೆಗೀಡಾದರು. ತದನಂತರ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಒಂದೇನೋ ಒಂದು ಐಡಿಯಾ ಉಳಿತು, ಎಲ್ಲ ಮೈಂಡು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದಿದೆ, ಬಟ್ ಸ್ಲೋ ಇನ್ ಲರ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಈ ಥರದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡೋದು ಹೀಗೆ ಅಂತ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಯಾರೋ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ರು ಅದೇ ಥರದ ಇವರು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಪರಿಚಯ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇಬ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಬ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡಿ, ಸರ್ ಹಿಂಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಗುನು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಆಗಿದೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಹೀಗೆ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಈ ಥರದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಉಭಯ ಕುಶಲೋಪರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ದೆನ್ ಒಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಆಲೋಚನೆ ಬಂತಂತ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ, ಈ ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಬದಲಾದ ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿ, ಧಾವಂತದ ಬದುಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು, ಮೈಸೂರು ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಮಹಾನಗರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ, ಗಂಡ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ನಾವು ಈಗ ಇಬ್ರು ಬೇಗ ಆಫೀಸ್ಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ನಾವ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಇವರು ಬೇಗ ಆಫೀಸ್ಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು, ಯಾರು ಅಡಿಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಯಾರು ಬ್ರೇಕ್ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಯಾರು ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನ ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು, ಈ ತರದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಚಾಲೆಂಜಿಂಗ್ ಇದು ಎವ್ರಿಡೇ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮನೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇರೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಇದು ಇವ್ರಿಗೂ ಆ ತರದ್ದಾಗಿದೆ. ಒಂದು ಈ ತರದ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೋರ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಈ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, ಫಿಸಿಕಲಿ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ಲಿ ಏಬಲ್ಡ್ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, ಇವ್ರದ್ದು ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು 2-3 ಕುಟುಂಬಗಳು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಾ ಈ ತರದೊಂದು ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಐಡಿಯಾ ಬಹಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ. ಇದು ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ಅಂತ ಸರ್ ಇದು ಟೈಟಲ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನೊಂದು ಮೋಟಿವೇಟಿಂಗ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅವರು ಈ ನಮಗೆ ತರಕಾರಿ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ ನೋಡಿ, ತರಕಾರಿಗಳು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ತರಕಾರಿಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಅವರೆಕಾಯಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಲಸಂದೆ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಇವಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅವುಗಳನ್ನೆಲ್ಲವನ್ನ ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡಿ ರೆಡಿ ಟು ಕುಕ್ ಅನ್ನೋ ಮಟ್ಟಕ್ಕೆ ತಗೊಂಡ್ಬಂದು ನೀಟಾಗಿ ಹೈಜಿನಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಪ್ಯಾಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಅವ್ರು ಯಾರೋ ಕೆಲವರು ಫೋನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಇಂಥದ್ದು ಬೇಕು, ಹೀಗೆ ಬೇಕು, ಇಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕು, ಇಷ್ಟು ಗ್ರಾಮ್ಸು ಅಥವಾ ಇಷ್ಟು ಕೆಜಿ ಅಂತ, ಅದನ್ನ ತಗೊಂಡೋಗಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕೊಡೋವಂಥದ್ದು. ಇದನ್ನ ಕೊಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇರೆ ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಪಿಜ್ಜಾ ಸಪ್ಲೈಯರ್ಸು ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಯಾರೋ ಸ್ವಿಗ್ಗಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದೆಲ್ಲ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಈ ತರ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆಯವರೆಲ್ಲ ಅವರು ಇದಿದೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಇದನ್ನ ತಯಾರು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡೋರು ಯಾರು? ಇದನ್ನ ಬಿಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ, ಅವರೆಕಾಯಿ ಬಿಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕು, ಅಲಸಂದಿಕಾಯಿ ಬಿಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕು, ಅಥವಾ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಇವು ಈರುಳ್ಳಿ ಸಿಪ್ಪೆ ತೆಗಿಬೇಕು, ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಬೆಳ್ಳುಳ್ಳಿ ಸಿಪ್ಪೆ ತೆಗಿಬೇಕು, ಈ ತರದ್ದು ಯಾವ ಕೆಲವು ವರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾವಲ್ಲ, ಇವನ್ನೇನ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಅಂತ. ಇವಾಗ ಸಡನ್ ಆಗಿ ಈ ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನ, ಬಹಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗೇ ಇರುವಂತ ಮಕ್ಕಳು, ಕಾರಣಾಂತರಗಳಿಂದ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಗಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಸೊ ಈ ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಸೇರಿಸಿ ಇಡೀ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವು ಭಾಗಗಳಲ್ಲಿ, ಇಡೀ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ ಅವರನ್ನು ಸಂಘಟಿಸಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೆಲವು ಭಾಗಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರೋ ಅಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಕಡೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಜಾಗವನ್ನ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ನೇಮಕ ಮಾಡಿ, ಇದೊಂದು ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಶುರುವಾಗಿರೋದು, ಇದು ನೇಮಕ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವರು ಈ ಮಕ್ಕಳೆಲ್ಲ ಅದನ್ನ ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡೋದು, ಪ್ಯಾಕ್ ಮಾಡೋವಂಥದ್ದು. ಇವತ್ತು ಅದು ಪ್ಯಾಕ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ರಾಗಿ ಇವರು ತಗೊಂಡೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಯಾರೋ ಈಗ ರೆಡಿ ಟು ಕುಕ್ ಅನ್ನೋವಂಥದ್ದು ಇಮ್ಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಬಾಂಡ್ಲಿ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಪಾತ್ರೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿ ಕುಕ್ ಮಾಡೋ ಅಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಅದು ರೆಡಿ ಆಗೋಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ತರದ ಕೆಲಸನ ಬಹಳ ಅತ್ಯಗತ್ಯವಾದಂಥ ಕೆಲಸ ಇದು, ಬಹಳ ಇದು ಇನ್ನೋವೇಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರೆಸ್ಸಿಂಗ್ ನೀಡ್ ಏನಿತ್ತು, ಅವ್ರ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಏನಿತ್ತು, ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಯನ್ನ ಅವರೊಂದು ಉದ್ಯೋಗ ತರ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಕ್ ಹೋಗಿ ಈಗ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ತರ ಆಗಿ ಈಗ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಡಿಮ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಭೇಟಿ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅಷ್ಟ್ರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಅವ್ರ ಡಿಮ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಇದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಯಾವುದೋ ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ನವ್ರು ಒಬ್ರು ಇಡೀ ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕು ಏನು ಅಂತ, ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಅಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗಳಿದೆ ಅಂತ ತಮ್ಗೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಐಡಿಯಾ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಇದೊಂದು ಒಂದು 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 ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ನ ತಮಗೆ ನಾನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಈ ಥರದ್ದೊಂದು ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ಈಗ ಈ ಬದಲಾದ ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಇದಾವೆ, ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಇದಾವೆ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಡುಗರು, ನಾನು ಮೊದಲು ಒಂದು 10-12 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಆಫ್ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ವರ್ಕ್ MSW ಹುಡುಗರೇನೆ ಕ್ಯಾಂಪಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಬೈಕು ಈ ತರದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತವ್ರು ಯಾರೋ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ತರಕಾರಿ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಒಂದು ಲೈಟ್ ಬಿಲ್ ಕಟ್ಟುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಮನೆಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಲೈಟ್ ಬಿಲ್ ಕಟ್ಟೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಈಗ ವಯಸ್ಸಾದಂಥ ತಂದೆ ತಾಯಿಗಳು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ, ಗೊತ್ತಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅವ್ರ ಮನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅದು ಮಾಡೋವಂಥದ್ದು. ಏನೋ ಒಂದು 108 ಕೆಲಸ ಕಾರ್ಯಗಳು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಒಂದು ಹುಡುಗರ ಗುಂಪೊಂದು 10 ಜನರ ಗುಂಪೊಂದು ಬೈಕು ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ವೆಹಿಕಲ್ ಆ ಥರದ್ದೇನೋ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇವೆಲ್ಲವುಗಳನ್ನ ಯಾವುದೋ ತಾಲೂಕು ಆಫೀಸಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೋ ಕೆಲಸ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಇದು ಏಜೆಂಟ್ ತರ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಇದು ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ದಟ್ ಏನೋ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ವಿಚ್ ಯು ಬ್ರೈಬ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಅಥವಾ ಇನ್ನೊಂದೇನೋ ಮಾಡಿ ಈ ತರ ಮಾಡಿ ಆ ಥರದ್ದಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಹೈಲಿ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಷನಲ್ ಎಫರ್ಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ವಿಚ್ ಇಸ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಕ್ಯಾಟರ್ ಟು ದ ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ನೀಡಿ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಅಂಡ್ ವಿಚ್ ಇಸ್ ಡೂಯಿಂಗ್ ವೆರಿ ವೆಲ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ. ಆ ಥರದ್ದೊಂದು ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲೇ ನನಗೆ ಇವರು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೋರಿಂಗ್ ದಿ ಎಮರ್ಜಿಂಗ್ ಡೊಮೈನ್ ಆಫ್ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಎಂಟರ್ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ಅಂತ ಅಂದಾಗ ಈ ಥರದ ಅನೇಕ ಘಟನೆಗಳು ನನಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ದಿಕ್ಕಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳ ಪ್ರದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಥರದ್ದೊಂದು ಇವತ್ತು ಒಂದು ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳಿದೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ, ನಗರ ಪ್ರದೇಶಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಥರದ್ದಿದೆ ಅದೊಂದು ನೋಡಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಒಟ್ಟಾರೆ ಈ ಥರದೊಂದು ಡಿಸ್ಕಷನ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ದಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಒನ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ವಂಡರ್ಫುಲ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ವಿಚ್ ಈಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನಿಂಗ್ ನೌ. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ನಾವು ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಮಾದೇವಪ್ಪ ಸರ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಆಗಿ ಬಂದ ಮೇಲೆ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಇಂಟ್ರಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ಗೆ ಬಂದ ಮೇಲೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಬಹಳ ಚಾಲಕ ಶಕ್ತಿಯಾಗಿ ಚಲನಶೀಲವಾಗಿ ಈಗ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ವಿಭಾಗಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಒಂದು ಕಂಪನಿಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಒಂದು MOUಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಬೇರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಗೆ ಈಗ ಮೈಕ್ರೋಬಯಾಲಜಿ ಅವರು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಿರುವಂಥ 3-4-5-6 ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರಿಗಳ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಒಂದು ಇಂಟ್ರಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ, ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿಕ್ ಇಂಟ್ರಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ, ಗಿವ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಟೇಕ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಲರ್ನಿಂಗು ಈ ಥರದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅಥವಾ MBA ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಕಾಮರ್ಸ್ನವ್ರು ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಬಯೋಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳವರು ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಗೂಗಲ್ ಮತ್ತು ಇವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ IBM ಜೊತೆ ಒಂದು ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಟೈಅಪ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅದ್ರ ಕೆಲಸ ಶುರು ಆಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಈ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಭಾಗಗಳು ಈ ತರ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಗಳು ಇದನ್ನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಆಗ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ, ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರೀಸ್, ಒಂದು ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿಯಾ ಒಂದು ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅದೇನೋ ಒಂದು ಗ್ಯಾಪ್ ಇತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ನೀವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲ್ತ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದನ್ನ ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರಿಯಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲ್ಸೋದೇ ಬೇರೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದೇ ಬೇರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದೆಲ್ಲ ಇತ್ತು ಒಂದು ಹಿಂದೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಈಗೀಗ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ನ್ಯಾರೋ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ ಆ ಥರದ್ದೊಂದಿದು. ಸೊ ಈಗ ನಾವು ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಆಲೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡೋಣ. ಸೊ ನಾನು ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಒಂದು ಆ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಡುಗರು ಕ್ಯಾಂಪಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತ ಈ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಮನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಈ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡುವಂಥ ಸರ್ವಿಸಸ್ ನ ಕೊಡುವಂಥದ್ದು ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ದೇರ್ ನೀಡ್, ಅದನ್ನ ಹಿರಿಯರಿಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಿದಂಗೂ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಇವ್ರಿಗೂ ಏನೋ ಒಂಚೂರು ಒಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಪುಟ್ಟ ಉದ್ಯೋಗದ ತರ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಮುಂದೆ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಎಫರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಇವೇನೇ ದೊಡ್ಡದಾಗಿ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು ಇದು. ಸೊ ಇದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ವಿಪುಲವಾದ ಅವಕಾಶ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಶರಣಪ್ಪ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡುವಾಗಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಅನೇಕ ಇವುಗಳನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಸೊ ನನಗೆ ಐ ಲೀವ್ ಇಟ್ ಟು ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಡೋಂಗ್ರೆ ಸರ್ ಟು ಗೆಟ್ ಇನ್ ಟು ದ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿಸ್ ಒನ್, ಅಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಅವರ್ Director of University Industry Interaction Center, Professor Madhavappa sir, also in between, he will also put forth his ideas. So let this continue, webinar series be continued. I'm extremely happy as a registrar that our university is exploring many possibilities during this COVID situation. We need to gear up and change our attitude and practices towards the changing scenarios, and let us try to do for the best of the social development and also holistic development of our society and humankind. I wish this webinar series a great success, and though we are physically far away, but definitely we can exchange our ideas, put forth our ideas, and come together to meet the demands of our society. Thank you very much for inviting me, and also in absentia for Honorable Vice Chancellor. I am extremely happy. So I request Madhavappa sir to continue this webinar series. Once again, thank you Yashwant Dongre sir, Sharanappa, and all other participants in this wonderful webinar series. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I extremely grateful to our registrar, who is a able administrator, for inaugurating this webinar series. Now, I think I want to introduce Professor Dongre. He is known to everybody. Professor Dongre sir, he is an internationally acclaimed professor of commerce and in other interdisciplinary subjects. He has established a third sector research center in our university with the help of Ford Foundation, and he is a visiting faculty in many foreign universities. Shortly he is visiting Japan as a visiting faculty to teach the same subject, so managing social entrepreneurship in Japan. I request Professor Yashwant Dongre to take over the session. ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಹುಡುಗರು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರು, ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ
ನಮ್ದು ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡು.
Okay, shall I go ahead? Okay, very good morning to all of you. I would at the outset request all the participants to make sure that you mute both your audio and video, so that we get all the internet capacity for us to communicate. This is first request from my side. The second one is, as and when you get it out, or when you want to ask a question, please post the question in the chat box. What I will do is, after I finish my presentation, I'll go to the chat box and then I'll try and respond to each of the questions. Okay, that saves a lot of time for us. And again, there is no need for you to ask the question, in the audio video mode. So we'll have these two things. One is muting your audio and video. The other one is putting all your questions in the chat box. And we will begin with that. Now, let me, I think, first share screen and get my PowerPoints on. Okay. Yeah, can you see the?
ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ನಾವು ಈ ಅನ್ನ ತಿಂದು
Can you see the?
ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡು.
ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ
ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸರ್, ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
sir.
Right. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes sir,
Yes,
yes
sir,
sir,
yes,
very nicely
Fine.
it is coming up.
Right. Okay.
ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡು.
Okay, let's start. And let me first of all clarify a few things about what we are going to discuss in the next 4 days. Of course, most of you, I think, who have joined are the students who are doing your MCOM, and also I think teachers who are teaching at that level. And all of you in the University of Mysore studying in the commerce stream know that we are offering a soft core course at the MCOM level. I think this is being taught at the 3rd semester or something, management of social enterprises. And quite often we have found that since this is an emerging area, a new area, not much being written about this, and especially from within India. And many times teachers feel that it's difficult for them to get the needed literature for this, and for students also. So I thought that I'll sort of make use of this occasion and give a full overview of this entire course that is being offered. So that means, in a sense, I'm limiting myself a bit narrow to the course content of the Management of Social Enterprises course. I am not taking it to a level where it is going to be a kind of a seminar where we are going to be much more critical on a specific issue related to social enterprise. Instead, I am by choice making this a kind of an overview of all the units, 4 units that are there in the syllabi of the course on Management of Social Enterprises. This is the first thing that I want to offer as a kind of an introduction to what I am going to do. The second thing, a very important one, if you have seen the syllabus of this course, you would already know that when we are talking about social enterprises, we are not talking about NGOs. We are not talking about the non-profit organizations. We are also not talking about the public utilities or public sector undertakings. Okay, so please keep this in mind. We are neither talking about NGOs or non-profit organizations, nor are we talking about the public sector undertakings or the public utilities, right? About full-fledged business organizations, which are like any other business enterprise, making profit or generating a surplus, which are professionally managed, which are competing in the market, okay, with the for-profit enterprises, and which are into all kinds of innovative services and goods that are required in the market. So we are talking about such organizations. And these organizations are not necessarily small. Please remember, there are a lot of social enterprises which are organizations that have an investment of millions of rupees or millions of dollars, and even turnover of millions of dollars. Let me begin by just giving one example of a social enterprise that is created in our own state, okay, in the state of Karnataka. If you can just go to the internet and look for a company called Selco, S-E-L-C-O. Selco is a Bangalore-based company, which is a private limited company like many other companies. And this company is essentially into alternative energy, that is solar energy. And this company also has millions of rupees of turnover. And they are operating in, I think, 6-7 countries, not just only in India, in Karnataka. And the person who started this Selco was also awarded the Magsaysay Award. Okay, Harish Hande. Now, somebody who starts a business organization is awarded the Magsaysay Award. Why? Because this is a different business organization. Okay, so this is a private limited company. This is competing in the market, right? Like any other business organization, it has employed a lot of professionals, engineers, right? And they are paid like any other, engineers in any other software company or such other companies. So we are talking about such organizations. Of course, there are smaller social enterprises as well, but I just want to impress upon you that we are not essentially talking about a non-profit or an NGO kind of organization, nor a public sector organization, nor very small business entities, but we are talking about regular, normal sized business organizations that operate in the market. And that is why this course is important for students of business. Okay. So this is very, very important. This whole domain is important from the viewpoint of what we call as finding constructive competitors in the market. They are very important from the viewpoint of providing goods and services to those people who may not have access to those goods and services from the regular channels, regular business organizations. They are also very, very significant in terms of catering to various specific social needs, right? So this is a combination of so many things. So keeping that in mind, many business institutes, especially schools of management, have introduced courses on social entrepreneurship as a course which is almost mandatory for all the students of business. That means those who are studying management, they are also studying courses on social entrepreneurship. In fact, many executives call themselves social entrepreneurs because they are driving their organization with a social orientation. So these kinds of changes are taking place. In fact, there are MBA degrees available with a full-fledged specialization in social enterprise management. So the world is moving towards that. Not only moving towards that, but at the international level, in particular in Europe, many universities are moving further from social enterprises, and they are today developing courses to what they call as the social solidarity economy. Okay, the social solidarity economy is a much, much broader, much larger a concept even compared to social enterprises, right? So this is what is happening at the global level. That's keeping that in mind, the University of Mysore has thought of bringing in this as one course at the master's level, and I'm sure, I think many of you may have opted for this soft core course and studying this. So keeping this as a background, and as I said in the beginning, confining myself basically to providing an overview for the entire course content, I'll go ahead with the 4 sections, which more or less covers the 4 units that you have in your syllabus. Let us begin with part 1. In part 1, I am basically looking at the concept of social enterprise, then theory of social enterprise, and the status of social enterprises today with particular reference to India. Because if I talk about status of social enterprise world over, it becomes too huge. And I think in your syllabus also it is being talked about India. So just the status of which are the sectors where we have these social enterprises in India. So I'll try and cover these things in about an hour, beginning from now. And then whatever time we have at our disposal, we can have for discussion. And if I cannot answer some of the questions, I think if these questions are, taken by the organizers and sent to me by email, then I think I'll be able to reply to those queries as well. Okay, with that background, let us begin with the idea of social enterprises. You all know that business organizations have evolved over time based on the needs of the time and space. When I say needs of the time and space, the needs of every particular time in history, or at the present, or in the future, it keeps changing. It's very dynamic. So as the need changes, you need different kind of organizations to meet those needs, and therefore business organization has evolved over a period of time in different forms, right? Similarly, space, when I say space, it is of the place. the need changes both based on time and place. And therefore, in different times, in different places, different forms of business organizations evolve. I think as students of commerce, you have studied all this, maybe right from your PUC, or at least in your very first year BCom, where you study maybe something about business organization and management, that there are different forms of business organizations, from sole trading, unit, or a firm, or a family business, to a corporate, which may be a private limited company or a joint stock company, okay, to cooperatives. Another evolution form of business organization. And also, we have in India itself, we have moved further than that. For example, within the fold of the Companies Act, we introduced what we call as producers companies, right, as a separate one. We introduced what we call as non-profit companies. So this evolution is a continuous process, and business organizations of different forms keep evolving over a period of time in different places, depending on the needs of that place and that time. Every time there is an economic or a social necessity, new formations have taken place. That's what I'm trying to say. There has been a constant tussle, however, between profit motive and the social good. When business organizations evolve, continuously with every type of business organization, this tussle is always there between making profit and meeting the social needs or the needs of the society. Okay. Sometimes we say that businesses are too much after profit. Sometimes we say that if businesses focus on society, then they cannot make profit. But at the same time, governments in different countries are really responsible. Like you all know, a few years ago in 2013, how for the first time in India, the new Companies Act brought in CSR as part of a legal requirement. Okay. So like this, changes have been taking place. We are trying to, sort of a bridge this gap between profit making and social good. On the other side, one side, there is the push for this CSR. On the other side, alternative businesses are emerging, okay, with the social goal. See, one way is forcing or pushing conventional business organizations to be socially more responsible. The other way is creating alternative forms of business organizations which are more socially more responsible. Okay. So social enterprise is the second one, because there are limitations to CSR. You cannot go on pushing for profit organizations for higher and higher profit. It is not very easy. So new forms of organizations have evolved. I'm just giving you two examples here. One is social enterprises. The other one is community corporations. Okay. So of course, social enterprises are found largely in the world, whereas community corporations are found only in a few countries, notably in some European countries and in United States. So let me not focus on the community corporations. Let me focus only on social enterprises, which you find more interestingly and importantly in most of the developing countries, including India. Okay. So that's the background. Social enterprises have emerged in order to make sure that this tussle between profit and social good have been effectively met with. That means you have to make profit, but don't compromise with social good, right? You have to do, meet the social needs, but don't forego profit. Both are necessary. Okay. So social enterprises are not like organizations which say, I don't want to make profit. For example, NGOs don't make profit. That's social enterprises are not like that. They do make profit. Okay. So I will explain in the concept then from for-profit organizations. Okay. Let's come to the basic concept. There is no universally accepted common definition for social enterprise. Lot of definitions are going on, and definitions are still evolving also. So it's been happening. Now, social enterprise is a functional classification and not a legal classification. So both of them we have to keep in mind. Number one, social enterprises are defined in different ways in different places. So that's been happening. Though I think it is possible to derive something that is common. And also, so what you call a social enterprise is not a legal category. So you cannot say that you register an organization as a social enterprise. That is still not possible in most of the countries. Okay, so it's a functional category in the sense you identify a business organization, social enterprise based on. So it is the naming of the organization that makes it to qualify as a social enterprise. This also we have to keep in mind. In other words, a social enterprise may be a firm, maybe a partnership firm, maybe a private limited company, maybe a public limited company. Okay, so it is possible that it can be a cooperative, it can be a trust, any of them. So please remember, you consider an organization as a social enterprise based on the nature of activities of the organization. Just as I started with the example of Selco, and Selco is a private limited company. So technically, legally, it's a private limited company like so many other for-profit private limited companies. We identify it as a social enterprise based on what it is doing, how it is doing. Okay, that is the most important thing. So I hope I am clear here that even the social enterprise is essentially a enterprise or an organization or a name given to an organization based on the way it decides whether it is a social enterprise or not. So how far this organization has social orientation, how far this business does its activities with social orientation. That determines whether you qualify to be a social enterprise or not. That is right. In Europe, there is a system. Just give me a half. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's continue. So the degree of social orientation, that means a business organization, how far it has its orientation towards society, that will decide whether it becomes a social enterprise or not. That's why, as I was saying, in Europe, for example, organizations are given what is called as a social enterprise mark. Okay, so the business organization will be a firm or a private limited company or a joint stock company, but there is an autonomous agency which gives a social enterprise mark. So they put that mark saying that, okay, we are a social enterprise. This is based on an assessment of what this business organization is actually doing. So let us be very clear, this is not a legal category but a functional category. Okay. However, we do have definitions which are accepted generally in different countries, accepted and used in different countries. In essentially because it captures the meaning of social enterprise as it is practiced today. Okay. It is not that it is a final definition that everybody says, okay, this is the definition, but it more or less covers most of the features of social enterprise. Therefore, that's being normally accepted. This is a definition, most popular definition, I would say. This is given by the United Kingdom's Department of Trade and Industry, and they came up with a report a long time ago, almost 18 years ago, in 2002. And there they defined social enterprise something like this: a business with primarily social objectives, whose surpluses are principally reinvested for that purpose in the business or in the community, rather than being driven by need to maximize profit for shareholders and owners. Just see what the definition is trying to say. This is a business organization, but a business organization primarily with a social objective. That social objective may be anything. It can be education, it can be health, it can be right now. So it's a social objective whose surpluses are principally reinvested for that purpose in the business or in the community. So they create a surplus, but instead of distributing that surplus to the shareholders, as big dividends. For example, I am sure you know that many companies, some software companies and big business companies, they are declaring a dividend of 200%. Of course, 200% on the face value of the share. Okay, if the face value of the share is 10 rupees, if they declare a dividend of 200%, you get 20 rupees dividend, not on the market value. We are not talking about the market value of the share. Now, that means the shareholders are getting maximum returns. Okay. Now, in this case, instead of giving that maximum return to the shareholder, the surpluses, bulk of the surplus is being reinvested for that social cause, either within the industry or in the community. Now, this is what it does. It creates a surplus, uses the surplus to pursue the social cause. Now, please also remember, it doesn't mean that social enterprises do not distribute profit to the owners or the shareholders. They do. But there is a limit. They believe that shareholders, of course, you cannot, no one will invest money if there is no return. So there will have to be a return. A return is given, of course, but the return is only a decent minimum return that one should get. So bulk of this surplus goes into the social cause. So in other words, more than focusing on increasing the shareholder value, the social enterprises focus on increasing the social value. Okay, now this is very, very important thing. More than focusing on increasing the shareholder returns, social enterprises focus on increasing the social returns. So that is where there is a difference between regular for-profit organizations and social enterprises. So they generate surplus being mostly used to pursue the social cause. Okay, so this is the most popularly used definition. There is another one which also is more or less similar, but I think its focus is very important. This is given by Sally Little. It's a more recent, relatively more recent definition. Social enterprises are defined as non-profit or for-profit business ventures that strive to achieve a quantifiable double bottom line of financial and social returns. I'm using this because this speaks a relatively more business language. Okay, so what is a social enterprise? A social enterprise may be either a non-profit organization or a for-profit organization. So we cannot reject any one of them, but they always focus on this double bottom line. The double bottom line is financial return and social return. It's saying the same thing, what I said. It focuses on both, that you will have a financial return at the same time social return. However, these ventures are financially self-sufficient. They are not fully a non-profit organization, because a non-profit organization or an NGO is okay. They are also not fully for-profit organizations, because for-profit organizations do not reinvest surplus so much into the social cause. That is why we are forcing them through, adding a clause in the Companies Act that you have to earmark minimum, so much percentage of your profit to social activities. All this we are bringing because they don't naturally do it. So social enterprises are self-sufficient organizations generating a surplus and focusing on social return. They get called as the double bottom line means financial return as well as social return. So it pursues this dual objective simultaneously, and such businesses are identified as social enterprises. So I'm using only these two just to make, bring in clarity as to what exactly we are talking about when we are talking about social enterprises. So these, we can, I still see some people who have switched on the video. Please put off your video mode so that the audio will work better. Just a request from my side. Okay. The social enterprises are business organizations involved in trading activity and earning a surplus. So the first feature is that they are in some trading activity. When I say trading, it may be manufacturing, distributing, okay, retailing, wholesaling, any of them. They do a business activity and they earn a profit or a surplus. That is one feature. They may take any legal form possible for a business organization to be established. Okay, so a social enterprise may be, as I said, a firm or a company, okay, or a cooperative. They can take any of those legal forms. Social enterprises are professionally managed, commercially viable, and compete with for-profit enterprises. So please don't think that social enterprises are established only in those areas where regular business organizations are not there. Right? So they are there very much. For example, again, I began with the example of Selco. Selco is more into solar energy, solar lighting. Okay. Now, solar lighting there are so many for-profit organizations which provide you solar heaters, lighting, everything. Okay. So they compete with them. It is not that social enterprises look or go only to the areas where for-profit organizations are not there. So they are professionally managed, okay, commercially viable, and compete with other for-profit enterprises. They are established to provide goods and service to the needy, those who need goods and services. So only significant thing is the social enterprises look at the need pattern and then drive this, business organization to the need. So that I think is a very, very important thing. Okay. So they provide goods and services to the needy people. They exhibit a higher degree of environmental concern. Normally, social enterprises are those which exhibit a relatively higher degree of concern towards environment. They also focus on social value creation along with monetary value. As I said, double bottom line. So they focus on creating social value along with creating monetary value. They reinvest or plow back the surplus to the social causes, okay, for which they are established. So this is what we derive from the definition. I hope these characteristics, these features will make it very clear as to what we mean by social enterprises. Now, I want to underline this again and again because as students of commerce, we should not think, that social enterprise means some organization where you have to go and sacrifice yourself. No. Social enterprises are very much like any other big business multinational organizations. In fact, there are multinational social enterprises also working in many countries. Okay. If you join them, you are paid like any other company. Don't think that because it's a social enterprise, it gives lesser salary. No, it is not that an organization where less qualified people are employed. No. Right. So they are perfect professional business organizations, very much. Okay. I think during discussion give you a lot of examples on this, which helps you probably to really gauge that. Also, social enterprises are a very important entrepreneurial possibility now these days. given the startup climate, given the chances for new enterprises to come up in countries like India, a lot of young people, a lot of commerce graduates, for example, can think of setting up such organizations. So when we tell you that it's good for you to set up a social enterprise, don't think that we are putting you to, set up some organization where you cannot make a living. It's not like that. It's a business enterprise. So that's why I'm making these things clear. I hope you now understand what exactly we mean by social enterprises. Okay, let us look at how social enterprises evolved over a period of time. That's the second heading that I'm taking in the first part about the concept and history and status and those kinds of things. Social enterprises evolved as a result of failure of the market to meet the varied needs of the varied consumer groups. There is, in fact, one broader theory. Of course, the name of the theory is different, but a theory that basically argues that the existing business organizations, whether they are in private or public, are not able to meet the needs of all the people because the needs themselves are so varied. So the consumers are called upon to compromise because they are not getting products and services as per their specific needs. For example, for some, the need may be of a particular feature of a product. For some, the need may be of, for example, of the price, of the quality. There are so many things. So you go and you search and finally you settle for something. That's what happens. Not that you get something that you actually wanted. So there is always a gap between existing demand and meeting of that demand, which we call as the unmet demand. Always an unmet demand for various reasons because of the variety of consumers and variety of needs of the consumers. So the existing organizations, existing mainstream organizations are not able to meet all these needs. Therefore, there is an unmet demand. In order to meet this unmet demand, social enterprises have come up. So they have started, their evolution started because of the presence of an unmet demand. The inability of the state as well as the existing forms of businesses to build access to goods and services paved the way for social enterprises. Now, what do I mean by building access? It is not that goods and services are not available. They are available, but you are not able to access that either because they are too expensive or because the nature of that product is not according to your need, right? So we have issues with that. Neither the state nor the private organizations are able to give you all that that you need. For example, some groups of people need a particular goods or service at a much cheaper rate, which the private businesses cannot do. You need it more on a more timely level, very quickly, which the government organizations cannot do. So social enterprises will try and fill that gap. Also, something added to that is the need for environmental concerns, conservation of resources, and democratizing the market necessitated new forms of entrepreneurship, and that is how social enterprises came up. We have been talking a lot these days about climate change, impact of climate change, so environmental concerns, and a lot of industries are the primary reasons why our environment has been affected. Carbon emission, for example. These things will have to be put down. And at a large scale, when businesses operate, they have lesser respect to environment. Okay, so you need to create alternative business organizations. You need to conserve resources, which means you have to create organizations that use less resources, to provide goods and services, because you need to conserve it for the next generation. You need to democratize the market. That means after the globalization, we find instead of too many players, there have been domination of a few. A lot of companies or the heads of the companies becoming too rich, and those companies having monopoly. It may not be 100% monopoly, but dominant presence. Now, this also need to be broken. You need more players. You need a market which is more democratic, so that the consumers have more choice. Okay, to do that, social enterprises have come up. So social enterprises evolved over a period of time based on the changing needs, based on the unmet demand, inability of the existing types of business organizations to provide or build access, and the other kinds of emerging needs like concern for environment, conservation of resources, making the market more democratic, more participative. For that purpose, the social enterprises evolved. Now, these are the first social enterprises. According to one interpretation, social enterprises started very early, right when the first cooperative was established in England, 1844, by what we call as the Rochdale Pioneers. Okay, that first cooperative itself is a social enterprise. People say that because that was a time when public sector was not dominant. There was not a big public sector. Entire market was under the private sector. So some people, whom we call as Rochdale Pioneers, they joined together and they said that neither government can help us nor private enterprises can help us. Therefore, we should have an alternative form of a business organization, and they created cooperative. So some people say cooperatives were the first social enterprises, but at that time they were not called social enterprises. That is number one. Number two, cooperatives are not fully considered as social enterprises today because number one, they distribute profit. They give dividend like any other business organization to the members. In some countries they do not give. In some countries there is a upper limit, but in some countries even that upper limit is not there. So they distribute dividend. This is one issue. The second issue is in many countries cooperatives were too much into government intervention. They function more like a government department. Now, that kind of a problem also has come up. Therefore, cooperatives are not fully, all the researchers and all the academicians don't agree about this. But certainly, Muhammad Yunus, whose Grameen is considered as the first modern, social enterprise, he himself says cooperatives were the first social enterprises. However, normally we consider the Grameen Bank, established by Professor Muhammad Yunus in Bangladesh, 1983, that is considered by most people as the beginning of social business or beginning of social enterprises. Okay, that's why Muhammad Yunus, after retiring from Grameen as the chief executive, has started what he calls as the social business group. He is promoting social business world over. Okay, in academics also he has a social business group which is called Social Business Academia Network. Okay, to promote social businesses. Now, Grameen Bank, it started as Grameen Bank, but today Grameen is a group of some 50 companies. Okay, they are into all kinds of businesses, not only credit. Of course, he popularized microcredit, which is very important, and expanded. And the Grameen was awarded the Nobel Prize. It was not the Muhammad Yunus, but the Grameen was awarded the Nobel Prize. And also, please remember, Professor Muhammad Yunus is an economist, but the Nobel was awarded not for economics. Nobel is International Peace Award, for Grameen. So this Grameen, which came with an idea of small doses of capital being taken by a lot of people and forming the organization, which today we call as crowdfunding. I'll come to that a little later. This kind of a concept, and therefore we recognize Grameen as the modern, maybe first modern social enterprise. Grameen, if you what is Grameen today in terms of size, just go to internet and see how many $1 million turnover and how much of multinational collaborations and many multinational companies investing in Grameen, and Grameen main office in Dhaka, I think, is a 20-storied building. So you will see all this. So therefore, it's not small; it's quite big. Okay. So this is how social enterprises evolved over a period of time. Now, why? Your syllabi also talks about this rationale. What is the social and economic rationale for social enterprises? Okay, that means why do we need social enterprises? Or what is the rationality of their existence in the market? Or why are they growing? Or why should we support, social enterprises? I think obviously these questions will come, right? So we need to, I think, talk a bit about this. Why do we need social enterprises? What made social enterprises to evolve? Okay, can social enterprises do business in a different way than the existing forms of business organizations? Okay, are there justifiable reasons for their presence? So this is rational. So why do we need them? Why should they be there? Why should we encourage them? Or why do we say social enterprises are a future and they are an emerging domain and they are going to expand? Why are we raising these questions? We will try to look at it from both economic and social perspective, because social enterprises focus on the so-called two, bottom line, double bottom line. What is the economic rationale? I told in the beginning, there is a presence of unmet demand. Okay, in many areas today, there is still an unmet demand, which means people have demand, but they are not able to access those goods and services. It is still there, especially in the developing countries, and not only in the developing countries, even in the developed countries, there are new types of needs that are emerging, and those needs are not being fully met with the conventional organizations, right? For example, some of the most developed countries have social enterprises that are focusing on housing. Okay, big issue. Big issue is one of the earliest social enterprises that was started. Big issue started in United Kingdom. It is there in all over Europe today. Big issue comes out with a magazine, and that magazine is like any other popular magazine. And the interesting thing is, all the profit they generate, this is a professionally run magazine. You have correspondents all over the world, and people all over the world write articles in that, all that. But this magazine is not sold in the regular shops. But those people who are the homeless people, they sell it. In the footpath, you will normally see some homeless people selling it. That means they provide jobs to those homeless. And more importantly, the profit earned by Big Issue is reinvested for building houses to the homeless. Okay, which countries? In United Kingdom, in United States, in many other European countries, in East European countries. That means homeless people are there even in those countries. Now, please remember this. Therefore, it doesn't mean that there is an unmet demand that social enterprise can create only, can meet only in the developing countries. No, not necessarily. Even in the developed countries, there are such needs. So the unmet demand, in other words, the inability of the existing organizations to meet that demand, which is there, that is the justification. Since there is a demand, obviously, when do you create an organization? When you find demand, right? So it's a pure business or economic consideration. Second one, there are limitations of for-profit enterprises. Now, also, we know that the for-profit organizations have certain significant limitations. For example, they cannot hold the price line. That means they cannot sell the goods and services at a affordable price. Okay, 1 minute, let me sip my hot water. Okay, so it is not possible for everybody to access these goods and services of the for-profit enterprises, or sometimes for-profit enterprises do not provide us with a healthy product. Sometimes they are too expensive. Okay, so these are the issues that we have with them. There are still limitations with them. There are also limitations with the state, that means public sector. When private sector is too expensive, public sector many times is too inefficient. You know, I'll give the example of health, for example, right? When it comes to health, now India, we say, is fast emerging as a very important health tourism destination. That means people from other countries also come to India, come to Bangalore for medical, support. So we are growing. Which are these hospitals? Many of those hospitals are big corporate hospitals. And if you go there, the rates are so high that you can't afford it. This is one pattern. There is good medical facility available to us, but unfortunately we cannot access it because it is too expensive. We also have very cheap medical facility available, because in the government hospitals you can go and you can be treated without any money. You don't have to pay. But people are afraid of going there, because they feel that if you go to government hospital, something will happen. Services are not good. People don't care. Okay. They don't treat you well. This is our problem. So which means health issues are there. Very good hospitals are there that we cannot afford. Free hospitals are there about which we are not, having faith. So what to do? You still have that, limitation. For-profit has its limitation. State has its limitation. Therefore, we have to think of it via media. Right? So that's the justification for social enterprises to emerge. There is also presence of demand, but lack of access to certain sections of the community. There are what we call as marginalized communities. It is not that it is highly inaccessible, but there are communities who for very different reasons cannot access it, because they don't come to get it. You have to go to them. There are communities of that kind even today in India. For example, India has more than 7% of its population as indigenous people, tribal. We don't use the word tribal, but we call them indigenous people. More than 50% of these indigenous people, even to this day, are not in the mainstream, right? So they don't know what do you mean by going to a hospital, for example. So you have to go to them. This is a very, very important issue. So there are communities of that kind who either cannot access technology or cannot access, health support, cannot access education support. There are so many areas of that kind, very, very modern kind of needs that are required. You have to teach them to use it and give the product to them, right? So this is something that is there. So those left out communities are there and no one is bothered about them. Therefore, you need to, I think, create businesses for them. There is a word that we often use, just as we use transfer of technology, we use what we call as a reverse transfer of technology these days. Now, the reverse transfer of technology essentially is that, in transfer of technology, what happened was technology was developed in developed countries, industrialized countries, and it was transferred to the developing countries. Okay. But today, reverse transfer of technology happening. That means some technology is being developed in developing country. It is now going to developed country. Why that technology was developed in developing countries? Because in the developing countries, there was a need, for example, to develop a technology where you need the technology, but you don't have the electricity. So without using electricity, something is to be used. In West, in developed countries, they had electricity, so they invented it, but you can't use it in a developing country. So now in the developing country, such technology, for example, the instrument through which you can measure your sugar level, or maybe see your heartbeat, okay, measure your blood pressure, instruments of this kind. Now these came up. Now for the developed countries, those equipments are needed for a different reason. For example, they have to cut consumption of electricity. They have to save the energy. They cannot go for atomic electricity. There are so many problems for them. So they are now looking for alternatives, and for that alternative, they are looking at developing countries. So reverse transfer of technology is taking place. Okay, so there are certain kind of necessities that you have to shift that. So if you develop some of those services in for a specific community, other communities also later on might start using it, right? So therefore, the social enterprises in that area is required. And also, very importantly, the last one is the need for constructive competitors. When I say constructive competitor, the process of globalization, what is happening is the state is withdrawing from different areas. Over a period of time, we have seen in our own country how private participation is allowed in so many different areas. And recently we allowed private investment and participation even in defense related areas. To such extent we are allowing private, and government is withdrawing. Earlier, what was happening? There was public sector everywhere, and that public sector was playing the role of the constructive competitor. That means if private sector goes out of the way, there is public sector. People can access goods and services from public sector. That used to be there. Now, public sector size is diminishing. Private is becoming larger. And what happens when private becomes too large? When private becomes too large, they monopolize, they develop their own cartels. Okay. So the small people are not being, properly cared for. These kinds of issues will come. So we need competitors. Now, in the absence of a big public sector, social enterprises can become that constructive competitor wherein you can control the private sector. You can say, okay, if private sector goes out of control, we have alternatives. So that kind of competitors are required. And these are the kind of economic reasons, economic factors, or economic rationale as to why we need social enterprises. Similarly, there are social justification or social rationale as to why is required. The social gaps still remain, and therefore we need organizations that can fill this gap. Need to address new challenges such as environmental issues. As I said, we need organizations that care more for environment. That say we do not further degrade the environment. We protect environment and provide goods and services. That is a very important social need. Need to democratize production and distribution system. That means, to the extent possible, there should not be too much monopoly of any good or service. It should be as distributive as possible. That means we need to have more number of small organizations than small number of large organizations. That is actually the need of the society. So, we need that. Enabling new business leadership. We need a lot of first generation entrepreneurs to emerge. Okay, so all first generation entrepreneurs cannot think big. They can grow big, they can evolve into big enterprises, but you will have to start somewhere which is much smaller, much accessible. And a lot of young people also are driven more by a social agenda. Okay, I want to make my living, at the same time I want to help people. When you are young, your social orientation is higher. This has been proved world over. When you become too seasoned a person, your social orientation comes down. So it's a very good opportunity to young people to come out with new enterprises with a social orientation. So we have both economic and social justification, both economic and social rationale for social enterprises to come up. Okay, let us now look at the theories of social enterprises. Now, there are different ways in which theories have been developed. What I am going to do is I am going to take a category of theory which is popularly used in the context of looking at social enterprise as a business, okay, as a business entity. So keeping that in mind, I'll take the theories and try and say how these theories are formulated and what do they argue. Okay. Now there are varied theories and approaches and models of social enterprises that are emerging, and theory making on social entrepreneurship is still an ongoing process. Okay. Unlike the other for-profit enterprise, the theory building for social enterprises is still an emerging issue. That means new theories are coming up every day. Somebody is coming out with a new interpretation. So this is going on because the sector itself is an emerging sector. For the purpose of understanding the reasons for evolution of social enterprises and the rationale of their presence, we can randomly identify some theories. So I have identified three important schools of thought, or three important theoretical models that explain the evolution or presence of social enterprises. Okay. The first is what we call as an institutional theory. Institutional theory, they say that all institutions are passing through an evolutionary process and change is a continuum. Social enterprises are part of the institutional or organizational innovation and evolution. Now, essentially, this theory says that what you see as an organization, whether it is a business organization or any organization, it is not a static. It is not something that is fixed. Organizations keep changing. It is not the first time that some new form of organization has come up. Organizations moved from, as I said in the beginning, from sole trading to family business to, partnership firm. So many evolutions are taking place. This has been happening over a period of time in different parts. So this is just an expansion of that and a continuation of that there is a new organizational form. And tomorrow another new organizational form will come, because this is a continuum. As the economy and society mature, people needs change, and the changed circumstances lead to evolution of new forms of organizations that are suitable to changed situations. Right? So there is nothing new, nothing very innovative, nothing that suddenly you say, okay, something has happened here. No, nothing of that kind. This is part of that continuum process. Things change, new technologies come, economies mature, societies mature, or maybe suddenly new problems will emerge. Now that, for example, COVID, there is a new problem has emerged. So there is a new demand and a new need. So this keeps happening. As and it happens, to address the changed situation, new organizations will come. Now there is a need of combining economic and social values, and therefore that need has created a new organizational form called social enterprises. So what does the institutional theory argue? Institutional theory argues that what we are seeing in the form of social enterprise is nothing but a continuous, a logical evolutionary process that has been happening from a long time in the business organizations. Business organizations have evolved over a period of time. As and when there is a change that requires, for example, size wise some change in the organization, product wise change in the organization, delivery wise change in the organization, post purchase maintenance wise there is a change that is required. So when these things happen, new organizations and new forms of managing organizations have come. Similarly, now there is a need for us to combine the economic and social need. For example, environmental need. Every business organization will have to think of environment now. Okay. And there is a saturation that has taken place in certain levels, and there is a unmet demand in certain levels. So people have to think about that new domain. This is happening, and therefore, as part of the continuous process of evolution of business organization that has been happening for a long time in the past, the logical sequence of that has led to the creation of another business organization, namely social enterprises. So this is the argument of the institutional theory. For want of time, I am only explaining this very briefly, but books will give you more details about institutional theory. Later, I am also giving you references where you can get more information on this. Similarly, we have another theory which which is known as the stakeholder theory. Stakeholder theory is a theory of organizational management and ethics. It is related to essentially organizational management and ethics. This theory, the theory involved the consideration of stakeholders and their relationships with the firm as a series of activities leading to the result that implicitly value and moral laden. The stakeholders force and participate in the formation of new organizations. The stakeholders need not always be a person, but maybe an object also. So it is the need to respond to stakeholders that led to formation of enterprises and organizations. So what the stakeholder theory is arguing is that there are different types of stakeholders. Okay. Now in every organization, we say there are different types of stakeholders. We say shareholders are a stakeholder. We say employees are stakeholders. We say consumers are stakeholders. We say government is stakeholder. Society is stakeholder. So there are different types of stakeholders. The needs of the stakeholders keep changing. And when it changes, what they do, it is not just that the organization responds to it, but the stakeholders force the organization. Okay. Stakeholders bring in a lot of pressure. Stakeholders will say, okay, now we need something like this. And stakeholders also want to participate many times, right? So we don't want, for example, in a typical joint stock company, the most important stakeholder, namely shareholders, they don't actually participate in the day-to-day event. There is a board and the board does everything. Maybe shareholders, not even they attend. You may be a shareholder, you may not even attend a general body meeting. Okay. But in some cases, it is not like that. People would say, I am the beneficiary, therefore I want to participate in decision making. Right? Something of that kind. Then stakeholders will ensure that there is a new form of business organization that is created. In Europe, in the 1970s and 80s, in many different organizations, there is a trend that happened. Organizations became bigger, and then there is a trend that happened which is called beehiving. Beehiving andre Janegood. Okay. So what happens in beehiving? Janegoodalli ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ಜೇನುಗೂಡಲ್ಲಿ ಜೇನು ಹುಳಗಳ ಸಂಖ್ಯೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಜೇನುಗೂಡಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ರಾಣಿ ಜೇನು ಹುಟ್ಕೊಳ್ತದೆ, ಒಂದು ಗುಂಪು ಒಡೆದು ಹೋಗಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಹುಟ್ಟನ್ನ ಕಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ ದೇ ಗೋ ಆನ್ ಸೆಪರೇಟಿಂಗ್, Now the same thing started happening because the organizations were too big, because the organizations were not responding to all the stakeholders. Stakeholders formed group. They came out of that organization and started their own organization. Okay. So these kinds of things happen. So the driving force for the creation of a social enterprise are the stakeholders. It is because the stakeholders wanted different forms of organizations. It is because stakeholders wanted to be more participative. It is because stakeholders found that the existing business organization is not really catering to their needs. They brought pressure and made different organizations to transform, change from their conventional structure to social enterprise. Or they came out and started new forms of organizations, namely social enterprises. So something like this. Stakeholder theory's main idea is, it is not a common logical extension of an organizational evolution, but it is the force generated by the stakeholders that has created the social enterprise kind of organizations to come up. That's what the stakeholder theory argues. Lastly, sustainability theory. Now, sustainability theory says it is a conception of understanding social enterprises as an organizational form found to be existing organizations as a measure of sustaining on their own. In this sense, non-profit organization which generate surplus, or which generally depends on donations and charities and finds it difficult to sustain through those means and resources, transforms into a business organization in order to become self-dependent or earned income. Just an example. So what the sustainability theory argues is that for different reasons, for different kinds of organizations, sustainability becomes a big challenge, and they realize that they cannot sustain in the way they are doing their business. So in order to sustain, they have to change. In order to sustain, they need to move towards a different form of organization. For example, if you go to IBM, IBM is one of the international business machines, one of the important multinational corporation. IBM is talking a lot about becoming a social enterprise. That means driven more by social agenda, because IBM thinks that the future belongs to meeting of the societal needs, right? Why a big multinational corporation is talking about transforming into a social enterprise? Because they are understanding that in the long term, their sustainability depends on how much do you respond to the societal needs, right? So it is this need to survive, need to sustain in the long term, that has made many organizations to transform into social enterprises. Here, this sustainability theory is developed basically by taking the example of non-profit organizations or NGOs. This theory argued, for example, that NGOs which have been addressing social needs a lot, they have always depended on donations which they were getting from others, from those who have money. But they realized that it is not possible to always depend on donations. Donations are not coming forth so much. So they have to generate their own resource, their own surplus. In order to do that, slowly non-profit organizations started converting themselves into surplus generating organization, that is organizations depending on earned income. So they are social enterprises. Okay. Of course, not necessarily this. That's why I gave the example of IBM also. At different levels for different types of organizations, there is a need to sustain in the long term. In order to be sustainable, they may have to transform from their existing character to a new character. And that is a process that we see that has led to formation of social enterprise organization. So there are two theories and sustainability theory, which are normally considered as the most important ones. Okay, let me come to the last section of my presentation today. That is on the status. What is the status of social enterprises today? And I'm focusing it on India in particular. So social enterprises in India. We have to be talking a lot more about social enterprises in India, because India is seen as the future hub of social enterprises. Okay, India is considered to be a fertile ground for the growth and expansion of social enterprises. We see this from the report of the Asian Development Bank. I'll be giving you details a little later, which is called the India Landscape Report on Social Entrepreneurship. It is estimated now that India may have around 2 million social enterprises. India may already have more than 20 lakh social enterprises already. They are not accounted for because there is no way of really considering them. And I told you that social enterprise may be a firm or a joint stock company or a partnership firm or a private limited company or a cooperative or anything. Okay, many of them we may see them as an NGO, but it may not be an NGO. So that's what it says. Likely to grow faster, since more than 70% of the surveyed organizations say they have expansion plans. So social enterprises are not already mature. They are new, they are young, they are doing good business, they want to further expand. So more than 70% of them want to expand, which also means there is also a chance of the new social enterprises coming up, and the existing ones expanding. So they will definitely grow in India. Engage in different sectors. Okay. So you find social enterprises in varied sectors in India. For example, 30% of them in education, different kinds of education, including higher education. 28% in agriculture and allied activities. Okay. 26% in financial services and 26% in alternative energy. Okay. So you see, these are some of the important mainstream areas of the society, and we have social enterprises in India in all of them. I think health is not mentioned here. Health is another very important area where we have social enterprises in a fairly big number. Okay, making a social impact. 80% of these social enterprises surveyed, they reinvest in social and environmental causes. So of the 258 that was surveyed, more than 80%, they are investing their surplus in the social class or in the environmental cause. So this is what is happening in case of India. So India has a strong presence of social enterprises in terms of number, in terms of sectoral distribution, in terms of their social orientation, and in terms of the possibility of future growth. In all these things, we find social enterprises in India are, something that's the future of Indian economy and society. Okay, that's the first unit. I think I basically tried to cover all the main headings that you find in your syllabi of the first chapter. I'll give some references. Please make a note of this. This I can also later share and send that to you. There are two books which now are being globally referred to as the basic texts. Now these basic texts, the two of them, will jointly cover almost everything that you have to study in that particular course. Okay, so one is this most famous one is Understanding Social Enterprise Theory and Practice by Rudley Duff and Rory Rudley Duff and Mike Bull. This is a Sage publication book. The cost is about $31 US. So maybe individually buying is difficult, but I'm sure for your library you can buy this. Second edition has come in 2015. I think this year the third edition is coming, but second edition is good enough. It has a larger overview coverage. Then Management of Social Enterprise. This is edited by a big group of 7-8 persons. This also, the international edition costs around $30, but there is a Sage India edition. Okay, Sage India edition costs 375 rupees. So I have a copy of this book which is 375 rupees. So you have to look for Sage India edition of this. This is a smaller book, but it has many functional areas like HR, finance, all of them are being covered here. So these two I recommend as the basic book, not only for this chapter, for the entire social management of social enterprise course. These two can be your basic texts. Apart from these, I'll give you some references as and when I take up every topic. For example, again, I'm not spending time on this. Additional reading on concept, definition, evolution, and features. Social entrepreneurship theory and practice by it's a Goodfellow Publishers booklet. This booklet is available online free. You can download it. About the rationale, economic and social rationale, there are two very important articles. These are journal articles basically, so you have to access it. I think Mysore University library has access to JSTOR and those kinds of things. So through that, it is possible to access Springer and Routledge, etc. So you can access them through that. About theories, there are three references I am giving for the three theories. Again, these are a bit difficult for students to understand, digest, because these are written at a slightly higher level of theoretical discourse, but they give you all the information. I'm sure teachers can read this and try and explain to students. About social enterprises in India, there are two reports which I think would be sufficient to give you all the details. Both these reports are downloadable, they are free. One is the India Social Enterprise Landscape Report, which came in 2012 by Asian Development Bank. The PDF version of that is freely available. And the State of Social Enterprise in India by British Council, which came in 2016. This is also freely available. So you can download these materials. That will give you enough material for this subject. Of course, additional reading is all for first chapter. Similarly, I will give additional reading to you when I cover the other topics tomorrow and after that. Okay. I hope you are able to follow this. I don't know whether I went too fast. It's just an overview kind of thing that I presented. And now I don't know how much time is left. 1 o'clock. I'll look into if you have questions. Let me answer them. Okay. First, I'll stop sharing so that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for good presentation on the first module of managing social enterprises. I request the participants to raise the questions if any.
Let me see in the chat box. Sir, can you give an example of a social enterprise in agriculture? How is it possible? Okay. When I say social enterprise in agriculture, you know, recently there have been the farm bill that has been so has come, and there is a lot of debate going on. It is not one bill but three bills that were presented. And there is one complaint that this bill primarily paves the way for contract farming. Okay? Now, there are groups of people who do the farming activity on a collective basis, not as a corporate farmer. There are organizations that, for example, focus on only organic agriculture or organic cultivation. Right? Now, they are social enterprises. If you say, for example, we are into collective farming, that's a social enterprise. Because what you are doing there is sharing, sharing all the resources. It's one of the best way to overcome the problem of limitation of small holdings. Right? Similarly, if you say you are into organic cultivation, again, you are avoiding chemicals, you are becoming eco-friendly. So I don't get a name, particular name, but what I'm trying to say is, you are asking how in agriculture there can be a social enterprise. So it is possible to have a farming activity in a collective basis, even a cooperative farming, which was there, of course, in India a long time ago, it becomes a social enterprise. Or if any one individual doing it or groups doing it in terms of, for example, organic farming, that also amounts to social enterprise.
Next question, please.
Is there any other question? Don't see.
Display padakkalva.
Okay, 1 minute. Right, there is a new question. I think Yatish Kumar. Sir, can government give legal status to social enterprises? Is there any example of legal status of social enterprises around the world? Okay, as I said, globally, there is a general trend that there is no separate law for social enterprises, but they are recognized as social enterprises based on how they are doing their business or what they are doing. This is the trend. In India also, we don't have any law. But the first country to come out with a legislation for this is Italy, where Italy came out with what we call as a social cooperative law. So there is a separate law for social cooperatives in Italy, which is considered as one of the social enterprise law. Now European Union is thinking of coming out with a separate law for social enterprises. In the meanwhile, in European Union as well as in UK, in particular in United Kingdom, there is a method called social enterprise mark. This is developed by an autonomous organization, and the government agrees for this. And you may be in any legal form, but you get a recognition as a social enterprise, so that you qualify for certain incentives that are available to social enterprises. So that is there in Europe. Otherwise, in no other country we have a law separately to register as a social enterprise. Let me also tell you that Indian government started thinking about social enterprises a lot in the last few years. And 3 years ago, a committee was set up, and a draft policy towards social enterprises is already there with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, but nothing formally has been done. There is a policy in the making about social enterprises, and hopefully that policy, I think policy is enough. There is probably no need for a separate law. If you have a policy, I think that will give a better sanctity to social enterprises. Can we propose tax benefits for social enterprises in India? Well, again, taxes depend on many things. For example, if you are talking about your regular GST kind of taxes, whether you are a non-profit organization or whether you are for profit, whether you are social enterprise, whatever it is, for some of those kinds of things you have to pay tax. This is one part. Even for NGOs, if their current year earning is not entirely used for on that year donations, and if it is held as deposit, and if the interest on deposit crosses a certain limit, they have to pay taxes. Okay. And earned income, if any NGO becomes self-sufficient and earns a lot of income, for that also they have to pay income tax. So the tax structure essentially depends on the income that you earn. However, there are some incentives available to specific activities. Okay. For example, if you are producing a product which is which gives better carbon credit, that means more environmental friendly, there are incentives available. Okay. If you are producing, for example, a solar heater or solar light, there are subsidies available. But this is available to an NGO, this is available to a social enterprise, this is available to for profit also. They are product specific. Yeah, please mute. I think there is a voice that is up. Okay, so that's it. But I think there is a possibility if we develop a policy on social enterprises in India, and if there is a social enterprise branding or marking that we can introduce, then it is possible that for social enterprises there can be certain tax exemption that can be given. So there is a possibility to evolve that, but it definitely takes some time. Okay. Okay, how social enterprises address social gaps? As I said, the objective of a social enterprise, the name itself, is that there is a social orientation. Let me say, for example, there is a social enterprise which is in the area of health. Okay. If you go to that ADB report on landscape report on India, some of the hospitals have been identified as social enterprises. I don't want to name them. You go there, you will find the name. The name itself, some of those names are very familiar, and those hospitals are making profit, but they follow certain policy. For example, they say for those who can afford paying, they charge one rate. For those who cannot afford, they charge another rate, much lesser rate, because they cannot afford it. Now they are a social enterprise because they follow a discriminatory pricing policy in favor of the weaker sections of the society, right? So how can they bridge this gap? The gap is there are people who don't have access to health services. Social enterprises are filling this gap by making the health service affordable to them, right? So this is how the social gaps are filled. Similarly in all other areas. How government can support social enterprises? There is another question. Yes, government can support, but first of all, you need to identify an organization properly as a social enterprise. The first and foremost thing I think government can do is to come out with a proper national policy on social business. So if there is a policy on that, then I think an internal mechanism can be developed, which is kind of a self-assessing mechanism for credibility and branding and marking, etc. If that happens, then there is a possibility that government can come out with certain schemes of assistance. It may be financial assistance, it may be tax exemption, anything like that. Okay, social enterprises are hybrid business form, are emerging new business form. It can be, some people say it is hybrid, some people say it is totally innovative and new. Okay, it's all, the discussions are going on. I think that is less important. Whether they are new or old, I think is less important. Whether social enterprise kind of businesses are required for today, I think is more important. Okay, now I am getting more questions. I don't know whether I have time for all of them, but let me answer. Which type of problem is faced by social enterprises often? Yeah, social enterprises have different kind of problems. Most important one, I think, is, you need to get capital. I'm going to talk about that in the next presentation tomorrow. Rising of capital, because you need investors who is ready to receive less return. It's very, very important. But remember, investors are easy to find because it is not donation. It is easier than donation, but it's a challenge. Okay, and they have to compete with for-profit organizations who get into cutthroat competition. So that challenge is there. And good human resource, you need very good human resource. You have to be very, very professional. And a lot of young people, I think, are more interested to join multinational corporations, right? So attracting people, even though you give money, the name matters. So attracting young talent is difficult. So challenges are there. Why many prominent business people move into social entrepreneurship? Yes, there are many of this. Is a very, very interesting question. I'm happy that you are following this trend. See, sometimes big business people either support social businesses, or they start their own social ventures, or they have created venture capital funds which will support social enterprises. This is because, again, tomorrow I am going to talk about it. We talk about angel investors and impact investors. Some investors have come up. They want to encourage new business to come up, and they want more socially responsible businesses to come up. For example, they are now retired. Now they have enough money. They don't need to make profit. So they would like a new generation of entrepreneurs to come. One best example is somebody like Ratan Tata, who has his own investments that he is doing after retirement. And most of them are in organizations of this kind, either a new organization or a startup or a social enterprise. So they invest there, many businesses invest there, they keep aside some money because they want to encourage it. What is motivation to social entrepreneurs? Well, motivation is that, see, I want to make a decent living, no compromise on that. I want good profit, no compromise on that. But I can make money at the same time if I can help people. What other motivation you need? In fact, one of the book in the syllabus, there is a book that is listed, the very first book in your syllabus. Below that, look at the subtitle of that book. The subtitle of that book is Making Money While Doing Good, and Doing Good While Making Money. Okay, that is the motivation. You can make money, at the same time you can help the society. Okay, if any separate act to regulate social enterprise, or it comes under NGO. There is no NGO act also. Please don't think there is an NGO act. We have a legislation in India that is a formation of a trust or a society. Indian Societies Act, Indian Trust Act, or we have the Cooperative Societies Act, right? So NGOs register normally, generally, under a Trust Act or a Societies Act, but they can also register under the Companies Act as a non-profit company. Even that is possible. So there is no separate NGO Act, and there is NGO again is not an official legal classification. An NGO again, you call a non-profit organization as an NGO, non-government organization. That's the name, popular name in India. Okay. So I think separate act, whether it is required or not, the debate is going on all over the world. A lot of people think that there is no separate act required for social enterprises, because social enterprises can take any form, and people are saying all businesses should become social businesses. All businesses should transform into social enterprises. So if that is the case, laws are required for all businesses, to control all businesses, to make sure that all businesses become socially more responsible. Okay, they are the questions. I think questions stopped coming, so I assume.
Thank you, sir. I think participants have asked questions. Sir, do we conclude?
Okay, fine.
Okay. So this is the first exercise we have done, very innovative exercise. As per your suggestion, we have designed the webinar series, 4 series, covering each module. University Zoom platform has a capacity for 1,000 participants. I request the participants who have participated, around 200 persons, to disseminate this to others, and let tomorrow and day after tomorrow more and more people would join and get the benefit. I am grateful to Professor Yeshwant Dongre for delivering this talk, and also I express my thanks to our registrar and vice chancellor for providing this opportunity, and our director P. Sharanappa, who encouraged us to conduct this program. I express my sincere thanks to all. Let us meet tomorrow at 11:30 for second session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If there are any problems related to audio, I mean audibility or visibility and sharing of the PowerPoint or anything like that, please do let me know. Is everything fine? Professor Madhavappa, were you able to listen? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we'll share it. I think I collected the name and email address and also the mobile number through the chat. So all 200 participants' information is with us. We will share the PPT to them, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So
Thank
see
you.
you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.